He was drunk, spiraling, and mentally collapsing. Not after a grand final loss, not in a nightclub, but inside his own home. Greg Inglis wasn't fighting defenders anymore. He was fighting his own mind. And by the time the public caught a glimpse of what was happening, his marriage to Sally Robinson was already over and everything but paperwork. This story is uncomfortable, not because it's scandalous, but because it's honest, and honesty is far more confronting than gossip. If you're here for real NRS stories without spin, subscribe now. This is Aussie NRL Updates. Greg Inglis and Sally Robinson didn't break apart because of one argument or one reckless decision. There was no single explosion. What happened instead was slow erosion, the kind that weakens structures long before they collapse. From the outside, everything looked solid: marriage, children, money, status. But inside the relationship, the pressure was constant, invisible, and relentless. The first truth people avoid is this: Greg Inglis didn't lose his marriage when he retired. He started losing it when his identity began to crack while he was still playing. Rugby league wasn't just his job. It wasn't even his passion. It was his entire sense of self, his worth, his routine, his structure. When injuries began to pile up and his body stopped responding the way it once had, something deeper broke. Pain became normal. Recovery became slower. Confidence quietly slipped away. And when a man's identity is built entirely on performance, decline feels like death. That internal collapse followed him home. Sally wasn't married to the Greg Inglis fans saw on television. She lived with the version nobody applauded, withdrawn, frustrated, emotionally distant, and increasingly numb. Painkillers masked physical pain. Alcohol masked emotional pain. And while alcohol didn't cause the breakdown, it magnified every crack already forming beneath the surface. Mental health struggles don't stay contained. They leak into conversations. They change moods. They alter routines. They exhaust partners. At first, partners support. Then they adapt. Then they survive. Eventually, they burn out. That progression is brutal because it happens quietly, without drama, without a clear moment where you can say, this is when it ended. As Greg struggled internally, Sally's role in the relationship slowly changed. She stopped being just a wife and became a stabilizer, a buffer, someone managing moods, managing crises, managing unpredictability. That shift is deadly to intimacy. Desire cannot coexist with constant emotional caretaking. Love needs presence, and presence was the one thing Greg no longer had. Then came a revelation that added weight to an already strained foundation. In 2015, Greg publicly acknowledged he had a son from a previous relationship during a break from Sally. Even if the timeline was technically clean, even if no vows were broken at the time, that information permanently reshaped the relationship. It introduced emotional complexity that couldn't be undone, a past that couldn't be erased, responsibilities that hadn't been planned for, and a reminder that the relationship had once fractured deeply enough for another life to emerge in the gap. People underestimate how heavy that kind of knowledge becomes over time. It doesn't explode, it settles. It sits quietly beneath conversations, beneath arguments, beneath reconciliation attempts. It changes trust, not through betrayal alone, but through emotional displacement. At the same time, Greg's mental health continued to decline. Depression narrowed his world. Everything felt heavy. Meaning drained out of daily life. Communication suffered. Silence replaced connection. Arguments went unresolved not because they were explosive, but because they became pointless. When someone is emotionally unavailable, conflict stops being productive and starts feeling futile. Public incidents followed. Drink driving charges, headlines, concern from fans. Those moments weren't just embarrassing, they destabilized the home. Because when private pain becomes public spectacle, partners lose a sense of safety. Not physical safety, but emotional security. Stability becomes fragile. Trust becomes conditional. Here's the hard reality people avoid. Love alone does not save marriages. Stability does, and stability was gone. Greg wasn't malicious, he wasn't cruel, he was lost. But being lost doesn't protect the people closest to you from harm. Emotional absence hurts just as deeply as betrayal. Over time, Sally was faced with a decision many partners of struggling athletes quietly confront: continue sacrificing herself to hold everything together, or choose stability for herself and the children. That decision isn't dramatic. It's not fueled by anger. It's fueled by exhaustion. The marriage didn't end because of scandal. It ended because untreated mental health, identity collapse, emotional distance, and relentless pressure suffocated it slowly and permanently. The relationship became unsustainable long before it officially ended. What makes this story even more confronting is what happened after. The divorce wasn't the end of Greg Inglis's struggle. It was the beginning of his reckoning. Only after everything fell apart did he fully confront the depth of his mental health issues. Sometimes rock bottom isn't losing your career. It's losing the people who tried to save you while you were drowning. And that raises an uncomfortable question. Did the system fail Greg Inglis, or did fame delay the help he needed until it was too late for his marriage? For years, the NRL celebrated his power, his dominance, his highlights, but nobody prepared him for the silence after. Nobody trained him for life without structure, without routine, without applause. Marriages feel that impact first. So when people ask why Greg Inglis divorced Sally Robinson, the real answer isn't simple, but it is clear. The marriage didn't collapse because of one moment. It collapsed because pain went untreated, identity went unexamined, and support arrived too late. This wasn't a failure of love. It was a failure of timing, support, and self-understanding. And that truth is far more confronting than any rumor. For real stories behind the headlines, no fluff, no PR spin, stay with Aussie NRL updates.